Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. That's depending on where you are in the world. This is the High Caliber Man podcast with myself, Hugh Mayers, and I'm joined by my colleague, my bro, but my colleague in the field of counseling and psychotherapy, Soliman Mathews. Peace, bro.
Greetings and peace to the eye, and peace and greetings to everybody out there listening.
Good to have a chance to have a conversation with you about such an important topic. This is kind of like in the climate of the Russell Brand era and story, and off of the back of that, or kind of like somewhat interrelated, there was a conversation on Politics Live, the BBC show recently. There is a comedian and writer by the name of Jeff Norcott, and he's written a book, The British Bloke Decoded, and he was talking about, a number of issues around men, some of them like quite funny and just, humor based, but there was something in the conversation that come up, and it was related to Rishi Sunak being urged to appoint a minister for men, because the disparity between the suicide rates of men between, I think it's the age of something like 19 to 45 is like the highest killer of men in the UK. And he spoke about that, and he was joined by a lady that I know that you have an opinion about, Ava Evans, aka Santina. And you could see in that conversation, if you've seen the piece, she really didn't care about men and suicide. She wasn't moved. And somehow the conversation got engineered into women and, sexual violence against women, and the disproportionality of that, which is an important topic, but nothing to do what he was talking about. And it was almost like a space of, you can have one or the other. Or to have a ministry for men to address things like disproportionate suicide rates and mental health and addictions amongst men, and these are staggering numbers. It's something like hatred towards women. But yeah, I don't know if you saw that conversation or if you followed that particular piece.
Yes, I did manage to see a clip of it on YouTube, in which the male comedian was speaking to a panel. I think it was three women, and another male. And obviously, as you know, Richie Sunak is being urged to set this up, Minister for Men's Health, which I think is relevant and I think is very important. The suicide rates are appalling among men, young men, unacceptable. And in any normal, decent society, this would be a cause for panic, for alarm, and heads would roll and things would need to be done about it. If young men feel they have no point in living, and I must say, I was listening to Laurence Fox on Trigonometry. I was moved why he felt he had to address Ava. When I saw the clip myself from the BBC, I felt, and this is my opinion looking at Ava, that she was smirking all the majority of the time.
Niggering, yeah, that's a good description. Actually, smirking.
Smirking, as you know,
Smarmy, a smarmy little self-conceited smirk, like nothing. It wasn't something serious. It wasn't a serious topic.
We're trained in micro movements with our clients, as psychotherapists, where we look at someone's face, and we know that 80% of communication is body language. So little smirks, little looks to the left, twitches of the mouth, touching the face. We can tell if someone's lying, telling us the truth, or they're insincere. There's incongruence between their actions. That's what we're trained to do. That's what we do. So looking at her in that respect, as a therapist, as a clinician, I could clearly see by her body language, she was not interested in what you had to say. She couldn't care less. And this comes on the back of other statements, which we'll touch on, that she has said, which are appallingly...
Such as statements like what? Statements like what?
Men. When I think it was Connor Tomlinson was picking up on the fact she was on Piers Morgan, and again, it was during the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trial, in which the discussion was, it's not women should, it's unfair that women make wrong accusations, or young men now are feeling because of that trial that they can be accused of something, and for it later to be found that that's not the case. So somebody was saying that it's not fair on men. Men shouldn't need to be feel that way. I think Connor was arguing that. One was arguing that. Mm-hmm. The bottom line was, she said, "What's wrong with men feeling terrified and scared And even if it's a wrong accusation, what's wrong with that? You know, women have felt scared.
Wow.
Yeah. So his point was you're encouraging illegality, which we discussed in an earlier show about law and legality and importance of law and society.
Yeah, cancel
And
culture is undemocratic.
Yes, yeah. And she was saying, what's wrong with that? Again, appallingly misandrist. If that view reversed the roles and said that many women, were being wrongfully railroaded into prison because men have been lying and pretending and saying things that weren't true. And the man came and said, what's wrong with that? Women should feel scared. Women should be terrified. What's wrong with that? She would be cancelled overnight.
I'd find that disgusting as a man. I don't think you have to be on the same team or whatever, on the same side of the debate. Like, I just find that as a human being, that would be wrong.
And this is my point. The point is, and her argument now is, all these, people on men and women, people on GB News have not said anything about Laurence Fox's thing when he said, would you think that, as in,
just for the listeners who may not be following the story. So in response to her dismissive tone and unempathic position on the Politics Live show, when the conversation shifted to suicide and men, he gave an interview on GB News and he made certain remarks because he was infuriated. We'll talk a little bit about why his context of it, but he basically said, I'm gonna try and be appropriate with my language, but we're all adults, yeah? I wouldn't do it. Would you do something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she felt, and she allegedly felt objectified. Yeah, but it's funny because it seems that Russell Brand got in trouble for doing somebody and he got in trouble for not doing something. I've heard that joke being made. But anyway, back to your main point.
So this, again, look at it. I mean, if you look at the thing is, obviously Connor Tomlinson is a GB presenter. Some people don't like GB News or whatever. That's not the point. The point of the matter is, again, as I said, he was on the show with her. And, he said when he was on the show that she said, women should weaponize false rape allegations in order to keep men afraid of actually committing sexual assault. And obviously, Connor, when he questioned her, she implied, well, maybe you and your friends would be against this. You know what I mean? Implying as if they're potential rapists, because they were saying, no, women should not weaponize false rape allegations. She blatantly said that they do that.
Imagine
and she suffered no repercussions for that, right? And obviously, he's saying if Laurence Fox, it suffers repercussions for his objectionable behavior, and we all agree that type of talking about women is wrong and it shouldn't be done. We all agree.
Laurence Fox, for fuck's sake. Sorry, I couldn't resist that one because that was a headline in the Sun newspaper years ago.
Why is it not equal for her? Right? And then he was actually debating this with another person on.
Because there is no equality; it's mythological.
And so he was, he was debating this woman on GB News. I think the woman's called Moya Lothian McLean, mixed race lady. And she said, well, I saw the show and I didn't interpret what she was saying when she said, that what's wrong with weaponizing it and false rape allegations. She goes, I didn't see it that way. I didn't feel it that way. I would admit that her delivery was clumsy, right? But I wouldn't see as she's encouraging women to file
false allegations.
So recently now, Ava's come on now. She's hit back against Connor Tomlinson and said, "I never encouraged
false allegations."
She said, Ava basically said, women should be able to weaponize false allegations in order to keep men afraid of actually commit sexual assault. So she's saying that I'm not encouraging it. And his point is that I never said that you was encouraging it. I said that you said, that men should be in fear of it by weaponizing it. So you see how she tried to change the language there.
A little fork tongue. A little bit of a fork.
I like that terror. Her words was, I like that terror. His point was that false allegations is wrong, shouldn't be used, and should be weaponized. And she goes wrong with that. I like that terror.
You see the same. We've come back to a similar point that we had in another conversation where whatever happened to the rule of law, presumption of innocence, And why is this society being led now by cancel culture? Because cancel culture is not reason. It's not about rationale. It's not about evidence and proof. It's about feelings. It's estrogen gone mad.
Yeah, it is. This is the whole point. It is. And again, what is it sending to society? What is it sending to young men when she can blatantly say that? And some women then get a sense of no accountability. They can say what they want about, as long as it's about men, it's fine. But you can't say it about women, because women, they're victims. And so the idea that they're victims and they're poor, need to be protected, they don't like that idea.
But bro, I don't want to blame these women. I don't want to blame these women. I think that there's been an effeminization and a moisturization of men in this society, that the society is going in that direction. I think it's Jordan Peterson that said order is masculine, and it's not him defining it, but I'm just quoting him because he spoke about order and chaos being feminine, right? He didn't say male and female, right? But he said, like order has certain things about it to do with logic, reason, rationale you can measure, and chaos. But out of chaos comes order, right? So not one's better than the other, but depending on where you apply the principles. You know what I mean? But the fact that if we're led by let me just finish this point. If we're led by cancel culture in the realm where law and order should be the order of the day, then we're going to be led into chaos, and then it's going to be destructive.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, whenever a woman came on and I agree with you, whenever came on Kevin, and she'd say, look, I was in an abusive relationship. I find that men are abusive. I find that men, reason why I want a man that's I don't want to be abused, blah blah blah. We said, okay, he said, police report, date, time. Can you tell us when that was? Not one woman ever came on and had a police report on his show in 3 or 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So like now we have Ava now saying that she's getting death threats, she's in hiding, she's scared. She recently came on I think it's Good Morning Britain, one of those shows. And that Susan Reed woman asked her, she goes, okay, so are there any police reports or anything about the threats to
and she sighed like if you say that's exactly what they do to women when they've been assaulted.
No, there isn't any. I'm not laughing. I mean, if it is serious, I'm not laughing to say she shouldn't, that she's lying.
But it's a reasonable question, but why is that question not even like? Do you know what I mean? You could have a reason, right? A good reason for why you didn't file a report if a criminal offense happened against you, or if somebody threatened your life, or if a woman was attacked. That's their choice. They could mention it in 1970 when it happened, or they could wait till 1985. That's their choice. But it is reasonable for somebody to ask, what was it that made you wait until now? That's a reasonable question. Or have you reported it? Yes. That's reasonable. But she sighed and tutted as if like the question in itself was patriarchal, sexist, misogynist, and proof of oppression. It's just a question, but from a journalist to a pundit.
And this is exactly it. So again, we go back to what we discussed in an earlier show and what it was debating now. The police reports, rather than go and get a police report, rather than go to the law, you go to the media, and then you argue, I can't get a fair day in court because of the misogyny around rape and SA, and because of that misogyny and the endemic patriarchal system, and the fact that it's a 50-50 situation, and men always rule in favor of getting the woman off. This is why we have to go to the media now.
But men don't rule as a jury of your peers, so women can be on the
yeah, but left wing Marxist.
Why is there a low conviction? We need to look into why. We need to apply money.
Modernism and feminism is not about equality for men and women. It's about equality it's about rule of women over men. Let's be honest about it. And that's the reality of it. So the idea that somehow it's for equality of the genders for the sex is absolute nonsense.
Well, it's not for equality in the family court. That's things related to custody and child maintenance.
Yeah, we have law. And they're not. So again, with Eva, feel free. If these reports of you being threatened, for one, I'm telling you, I'm begging, if you listen to this podcast or to the show, go to the police. Go there, get the protection you need.
Yeah.
Right? Why don't you want to do this?
Again, at least so that the police are aware of these individuals, right? So they can keep an eye on these. They might be threatening other women.
Yeah, exactly. So again, like with the 4 other women in the Russell Brand case, the woman making the allegations, go to the police. You've got the lawyers from Channel 4. You've got the lawyers from the Times. You've got the lawyers from the BBC. These big wig legacy media lawyers, the top ilk quality. Why have none of them said we'll support you in any legal case against Russell?
No.
And even with Eva, you don't even, if you're being threatened, you don't need to go to the police. The police will come to you. Like again with Russell's case, police have said anybody's got historical issues with Russell, please come forward. So they're actually begging people to come forward. And so far, nada, niche, zero, niet has come forward.
9.
Interesting. 9. Interesting, don't you think?
Very interesting.
So
Absolutely fascinating.
laws.
But I want to come back to something about Laurence Fox when he was talking about male suicide, because he said something that was really pivotal for me as somebody that's delivered suicide training, suicide awareness training in the past, right? And he said, what's so dark about men's suicide, or what's so troubling or so deep about, is that you don't see it coming. It's something that people don't see coming. And I remember delivering some suicide awareness training one time with a colleague in the past, and a grown middle-aged Cockney man, this is a geezer, yeah, he broke down in tears in the middle of the training, giving a story. And he spoke about a friend that had been down in the dumps, been divorced, and was on low times in terms of his morale. And, he was just really depressed, struggling with depression, right? Had lost his family and was struggling with depression. And he invited all of his friends to the pub for a drink. And they said, that was a great night. It was the best they'd seen him in ages, right? My mate's on his way back. I'm feeling a bit emotional actually talking about it, because if you can imagine if that was your friend, that's the best time I've seen him in years. He hasn't been like that in years. And then the next day, the same Cockney geezer gets a call from one of the friends that was there. Their guy's dead, killed himself. And so when I saw Laurence Fox well up like the way that he did, I can see where his anger came from. I think it was righteous anger, and we're allowed to be angry, but maybe he didn't channel it in a way that was he didn't channel his anger in a way that was helpful for the kind of outcome that he wanted, and it allowed people to sweep over, and all these other media organizations and politicians and everybody wants to ban him from telly, and he shouldn't be on the broadcast. What do you call it again? The broadcast ecology, and he should be removed. But they didn't even take a second look at the issue of the importance of trying to, make progress in the field and prevention and suicide awareness for men within that particular age group, which of such high risk. And I think that's absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Yeah. So I understand his anger. I think he was right. I think he was right in his anger. Absolutely right in his anger.
He's right. And he was very emotional when I watched the trigonometry. I don't want to plug those two guys, but he was very, very emotional. And I know he's an actor, he's a trained actor. And like you said, as an actor, he's trained to go straight to the emotion and bring it out.
Visceral, bro. It was visceral.
It was visceral. And I had people in my life, clients I'm aware of. I deal with clients who come to me who would try to commit suicide and the rest of it, and I'm having to rebuild them as a human being and give them a sense of life and the importance of life. It's very difficult work.
Giving them hope, giving them hope, giving them hope, giving
them hope, and that's the thing that they lose. And for a lot, this is why when most people, when I talk to people, I always ask them 3 times, are they okay? I don't ask them just once. I'll say, are you okay? And they'll say, yeah. And I say, no, but are you okay? And they'll be like, no, I'm fine. No, really, are you okay? I always tend to ask particularly my male colleagues that are my clients or friends or people. I'm like, are you okay? No, seriously, are you okay? Because the point is, people are not okay. They're not fine. And many people who are suicidal will feel, particularly men, I haven't got a role in society. I haven't got no place in life. And if I'm not here, in a way, if I'm not here, no one's going to notice me anyway. And I'm helping people by not being around because I'm such a miserable person. So what this Ava woman is doing when she sidelines and sniggers and laughs and
sneers and finds almost just like casually funny.
That should be terrified and scared. Then I hope she thinks that her dad should be terrified and scared. Hope she thinks that any future son she had should be terrified and scared of women making false accusations against them. Hope all of the slop she's slopping out on other males that she doesn't think is important to her comes right back on her. because
Mm,
this is
mm.
a self-fulfilling prophecy of destruction of women eating their own children, their own boys, because no woman's going to want to bring up her boy, right, and have some other person lie on them and falsely accuse them and destroy their livelihood. Because then, not only was it, this is not only a reflection on the patriarchy, it's also on the matriarchy. It's also
The
what are you
gynocracy, you mean?
indoctrinating? Gynocracy, yeah. What are you
Gynocracy,
indoctrinating in
man.
these girls, yeah? And what are you doing? And you're adding to the, because these boys are brought up, majority of them by mothers, by a lot of them by single moms. I'm sure the statistics might bear some of this out. And that feeling of hopelessness and loss, you produce a generation of simps,
Of
broken down, weak men,
noodleback,
yeah,
spineless, gutless
spineless
men.
men.
You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
40 years of feminism was produced, and you're wondering why the men is like this. And then you're gonna come on social media, many of these women, and say, where are all the good men? There are no real good men around. Men are weak, but at the same time, men are patriarchal, in control. Some sinister group of men sitting down
In some smoke-filled dark room planning to oppress the matriarch,
oppressed women.
the great, the
Women
great, the
doing it
great
for thousands
feminine,
of
the
years,
divine
yeah.
feminine or something like that. I don't understand. I want to take it a little bit further. I know we've only got a little bit of time left, but I do want to take it a little bit further before we close out. And I'm just saying that what messaging are we sending to society? If somebody like Laurence Fox, who's in the mainstream, if somebody doesn't open their mouth, right, like as a pundit or a person that wants, in the mainstream, somebody doesn't speak and have a spine. At what point is certain types of behavior and certain messaging telling boys that they're basically, potential rapists, or they are, potential oppressors, and that they should always come from an apologist stance. Like that program we won't mention again, but that begins with a T. That station, the guy that was interviewing Laurence Fox, he had to say about, I think it was a mantra, like not that I agree with what you said, and we'll all agree that it's disgusting. He said that about 15 times. Couldn't he just made his disclaimer at the start? Why is this continuous bending over backwards, yes, Bwana, yes, massa sort of energy towards the situation? Like, it was wrong. Yeah, it wasn't the best use of language, but I get your point. And crack on with the conversation and have the analysis. Why is this constant apology? Who's apologizing to the destruction of the male image that young boys have to
Why
absorb
is
from
it
the
so
mainstream?
bad? I mean, not to jump in, but why is it so bad? Because obviously he said, "Would you S this woman?" And they laughed about it. It's schoolboy humor, stupid, silly little dumb. And Lawrence himself has said it's unforgivable what I said. It was wrong. It's not me. It doesn't represent me. It was just a dumb statement. I did check it out with the GB News to the producers. Everybody okayed it. And it was, and it was, and he said, "Come on, let's be honest."
He was a fall guy. They okayed it. They gave it the thumbs up. Yeah, sure, that's all
Yeah,
right. Say it. Have
pure
another glass
clickbait.
of wine, Laurence. Have another glass of wine. Why don't
Yeah,
you?
exactly. Pure clickbait. That's what he's brought on for. And he goes, that's
Yeah.
the reality of it. But the deepest thing is about freedom of speech, freedom of expression. Can Ofcom really be? Do we have this moral arbiter, this Stalinist
Of
thing that?
communists. Of
The
communists.
deeper conversation is about male suicide, what feminism is causing towards that, toxic femininity, and freedom of speech and the law. These are the real big issues, but this is all side issues. Look over here, don't look over here, don't look over here, don't look over here. Let's pass all these online bills that we're going to do that would, again, cut our freedom of speech. Yeah, this knee-jerk reaction. So they create the situation, then respond with it, and then they take away more of our rights. Ultimately, this is what's happening. More rights are being taken, and more lives are being lost by male suicide. That's the bigger picture, not whether or not you would Ava. She's a side issue to all of this. Falling as she is, disgraceful as though she is in the comments, yeah? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not saying she should be, again, I'm not going to be like our friend on the T channel, but the point of the matter is, Laurence spoke from his heart, and maybe sometimes the message is in the delivery.
And I think it was schoolboy like, but I think you know why it cut deep as well. Personally, I think it cut deep because it did speak to something about men and women in heterosexual society. Because whether we want to admit it or not, whether we like to or not, that kind of concept of being desirable, it still played a role. It wasn't enough for her to say, well, oh, who's he? He's not my type, and end off. Please, she could have just taken it that way, right? It could have just been that. And a naughty, that was a bit colorful, right? The way that he expressed himself, but no, it went deeper than that, right?
Naughty, very naughty.
Because you know what? It cut her deep, innit? It cut her deep. Because the truth of the matter is, if we want to be honest, right,
Yeah, because obviously,
there are some,
again,
as heterosexual men, we can say this, right? There are some
we
women
cheat.
who might be physically attractive, but the misandry that and the energy and frequency that oozes from their very pores makes them very, very unattractive. I think that's it's a metaphor, not a literal, not something that's just literal. But it's, in other words, you're bloody ugly.
I totally agree with you. I find it that the dichotomy
it means you're bloody
that,
ugly, not physically, but like, in other words, your energy is
I think that,
bloody
yeah, if
ugly.
I could just jump in, yeah, if I could just say that, I think the dichotomy is, I always find it strange that women who are against lipstick, makeup, and the whole feminist ideal is that women shouldn't look the traditional sexual fetish or object to women, to men, just put on that, wear that uniform, come on shows, look like that, but then display a complete misandrist hatred for men. So it's almost like, I still need you to look at me. And then when you talk about sexual market value, you can't define me. I'm a 10. You can't tell me I'm this, about that. And feminism is about, if you want to be sexually whatever, come on a show. And you want to talk about something unlimited men you've had, you can come on show. It's fine. What's wrong with that? Men do it all the time. But yet somehow when it comes to Russell being a Lothario, he's wrong what he's doing. When he's exercising the same thing that women say they should be able to do equally across the board. But somehow he's a bad person.
He wasn't respected for being an autonomous sexual being that owns his sexuality. Yeah. he was a
woman, would we be lauding that? No, I mean, no one seems to care about Madonna. Did all she did. Everybody was lauding Madonna, right? And now so it's this idea that don't judge us by the sexual market value. It's ridiculous. That's evolution. That's just how it is. And as you said, some women are so disgusting, so distasteful, no matter how they appear on the outside. In the shadow, there's nothing but dark, disgusting nastiness inside that person, vitriol, that nobody, male or female, wants to be around.
I hear that. And to me, I wonder what your thoughts are. That is it possible? Just bringing it back to Russell for a moment. Do you think that Russell Brand's crime was treason? Is Russell Brand a traitor?
No.
All right, I'm gonna go a bit further. What I mean by that is, did he take his knowledge of the mainstream media, once being their darling, once being their blue-eyed boy, and once being a very part of that infrastructure, and that mainstream BBC, Channel 4, etc., and the various columns that he wrote for, right? But then now going online and trying to challenge the mainstream narrative. So is that his real crime? Nothing to do with inappropriate behavior with women, but they're using that to behead him. What say you?
I believe talking to power is his real crime. He has done whatever has happened. He's reformed. He's written books about it. He's told you he's ashamed of himself. He was a disgrace. He was a sex addict. He was a drug addict. He crawled from the gutter of what many people would not come out of. And now he's a person who he always said, I was one step away from going back to being a heroin addict. He's made amends. He set up charities to help women, to help children. Yeah, he came up with Hollywood because he's attacked the Hollywood elite, because he's talking about black war, because he's talking about the illegal war in Ukraine. He's
the
talking
proxy war, as you call it.
Proxy war in Ukraine, because he's talking about, he's talking about highlighting WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, who too was charged with essay and found not guilty. Because he's now not the darling of he's a conspiracy theorist. He's now a darling of the outright. He's now, now he's a whack job. He's a wacko. He's crazy.
I love how they do that. I love how they do that. Even Piers Morgan was saying that about, I think it's actually preposterous that it's a conspiracy, because government don't lie in it. Well, like that, the weapons of mass destruction was obviously
COVID, yeah. Supposing all the COVID people
lies about COVID. No, they weren't true. The FBI working with organized crime to destroy the Black Panther Party and flooding, inner city areas.
No.
By those facts.
We know as clinicians the damage that lockdowns did in terms of the mental health of our young people. We know it's added to the suicide rate. We know it's added to young people being dysfunctional and
depression,
joining gangs, all this type of thing. And we know it's depression, what it's done to mental health, it's done to anxieties. It destroyed, ripped families apart. We know the absolute incalculable damage that it's done. So if someone is highlighting that, what is the problem? But because big pharma, governments, these clandestine people in the shadows, in the shadow realm, don't want you and I to really understand that 5% of the population is ruling 95%. They want to keep us deaf, dumb, and blind to that. So long as we argue over these stupid identity politics, horrific thing, you're black, I'm white, you're male, you're female, you said this, you said that nonsense, they get to continue to run the world, steal all the resources of the world, create wars, lie to the people, and break society down. That's what it's all about.
And just to add to that, cancel culture then becomes convenient, right? Because I know you have an extensive history, a knowledge of the history of like the former Soviet Union and the Gulag and the Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks and that. I know you've broken stuff down to me on a personal level about some of those issues to do with Stalin and stuff like that. But I would say that again, it's, you know, like cancel culture being undemocratic, and it does work in favor of a kind of economic dictatorship, because if you are somebody speaking from, you know, well, let's say that social media was supposed to democratize, right? Give people access and the ability to have a platform to millions, like individuals can have, you know, platform to millions. It's a good way of removing people that don't, you know, co-sign the mainstream narrative. You know, because the mainstream press, what they call legacy media right now, the stories are very, very similar.
Yeah.
So going back to what I mentioned in the previous video, there's 3 separate branches of government: judiciary, executive, and legislator, right? And then the press being the 4th estate, meaning that these 3 organizations, these 3 branches of government are there to regulate each other, to make sure they're not oppressive. And if they do stray, we are here to put pen to paper, right? To expose. So there's another form of safety net of regulating in the democracy. But now the press is just all in bed with the executive. Yeah. So, and the legislator and the judiciary, they're not challenging. If they were challenging, wouldn't they be doing 4-year documentaries, not about an individual, but about why the CPS have got such low successful prosecution rates with SA and violence against women? You know, why the Metropolitan Police, the West Midlands Police, the Yorkshire Police Force, etc., etc. Why the need for more training, specialist intervention to help women when they have been victims of these crimes and things of this nature, to bring about a different success rate? Why are they not funding major universities and think tanks to do the analysis and to do the meta research so that they can bring about a change, a systemic change in these areas? No, we are for cancel culture. That's the easier way to go about things, because it's convenient and it's undemocratic. But I think we've actually run out of time. It's been a pleasure, bro. As always, plenty of food for thought. And as I greeted you earlier on as good morning, good afternoon, good evening, I want to say peace.
Peace, and stay safe.